I thank you folks for coming and participating and being as candid as you possibly can. Keep in mind, folks, as we're collecting these questions and so forth, legally, these folks are bound to the fact that they cannot really discuss the NPRM or the notice for proposed rulemaking. I know if you think they haven't been beaten on, you're wrong, because I know myself sitting down with them, yeah, we're trying.
Daily.
And,
You beat on us daily.
you know, I'll be the first to admit, usually I'm pretty successful at doing things like that, and it hasn't happened yet. So I, again, thank the folks. The questions, like I said, we're collecting them, and I have a couple up here to start with. First question, the original charge was to leave model aviation alone, or at least intact as we know it. Why has that changed?
I don't think that has changed, actually. And let me explain what I mean by that. First, I think it's necessary to keep in mind that we are not part of the rulemaking effort. We are not part of the rulemaking team that created the rule from the ARC recommendations that Rich spoke of. If I had to look, because I do know what the rule says, I was part of the safety team that assessed the proposed rule. I think the way that they captured model aviation and allowed for the creation of this standard, I think is probably the best way to leave model aviation intact and still protect it from the regulation that will be much more demanding for commercially operated small unmanned aircraft. And I don't know if you have a different perspective, but that's
just to add
how
to
I would
it,
probably perceive that.
I think Rich, in his summary of what's taken place, did a really good job. At some point, and I don't recall offhand what the date was, but unmanned aircraft started to get really broadly, they were starting to be really broadly used within the national airspace system. And a lot of that technology was starting to be more broadly used. And it became important at one point, I think 4 or 5 years ago, for the FAA to reiterate what an aircraft is and what our regulatory responsibilities are. And in doing so, I don't know if you recall the date, in doing so, that's when, and I don't have the exact words, but things that fly are things that we're concerned and responsible for. And so model aircraft fly, and so do small UAS. And that's when the ARC took on the task of really working through and getting broad community input on it. And so to ask the question again about model aircraft, and I think the words were leaving them alone, or what was the exact?
Basically, the question states the original charge was to leave model aircraft alone.
Yeah. So I don't know which original charge is being spoken to there. In the standards effort, and in our dialogues consistently since we met with the EC 2 years ago in Muncie, it was we want to work with the AMA to make sure that that model aircraft are intact as they can and actually flourish. And there are activities that go on today that sometimes I read it in I think it was my December issue, about the FBI being concerned about the use of certain model aircraft for less than good intent. And some of these activities, and maybe marginal activities, to the general public that aren't familiar with model aircraft, might not be perceived as in a good light. And so having a rule and a standard that not only enables model aircraft to continue and flourish, but gives clarity to what safe is, really is a positive step forward, and not just a task of addressing what a model aircraft is for the sake of addressing it. So a lot of positives. I don't think that we're detracting from model aircraft at all.
Okay. Next question. What would you say to a modeler that wants to go out and buy a high-end type airplane or high-end equipment such as a turbine?
Enjoy, have fun. If my son was at that stage, for those of you that were here last year, I bought him his first Night Vapor this year. He's getting a Super Cub. But if he were at that stage, I personally wouldn't hesitate. We have people that are working the effort that have Turban Waivers, and
Okay.
I know there's a lot of angst. We were at Joe Knoll middle of last year, and then we were here last year as well. And there was a lot of angst from industry. There were a lot of people that were asking that same very question about, hey, I'm going to drop a couple $1,000s on a model. You know, is it all for naught, and I'll have to put it on eBay and try to get something out of it, or you know, take it to the Lebanon flea market coming up shortly and see what I can get out of that. I as a modeler am not personally concerned about what I invest in moving forward. I think that AMA that's participating in the standards leadership are aware of what the modeling community wants to do, and they're working hard to represent that and how it can be done, accomplished safely. Which gets to some of the challenges that we have that I think both Bob and Rich spoke of, which is getting that written in a manner that shows that it's safe so that you can go out and do those operations. But I personally don't have any concern as a modeler, a long-time modeler, that I'm not going to be able to do what I want to do in the future moving ahead.
And I would kind of close that out, I think. From the very beginning, when I took over the oversight of the modeling standard, I think one of the key points that I tried to always drive home, and I still do, make sure we are capturing all of model aviation. We don't want to leave anything out. And when we'll write a standard, I have obviously very limited knowledge of modeling compared to the experts, you know, that I'm working with from AMA. But I'll say, well, does how we're writing that impact such and such? Okay, then let's write it differently so that we make sure that we're protecting, you know, the full range of modeling activities. So I think there's an enormous effort to be thorough in the group to make sure that all of modeling is protected. You know, that we're constantly driving to that point that we have to capture everything. So if I were at the point of being a turbine pilot, I would not hesitate to buy my next aircraft.
Okay. Does the FAA consider modeling unsafe?
I think we got that question a little bit last year, when a lot of people thought that perhaps the rule-making effort was a result of a perception that model aircraft flying was unsafe. And I don't think there is any such view within the FAA that modeling is unsafe. There are a lot of modelers. Obviously, those of us in the Federal Aviation Administration are involved in aviation and all kinds of aviation. You know, James, longtime modeler. So a lot of people within the agency are longtime modelers. A lot of people that fly aircraft began flying model aircraft with their parents. And so I would say, no, I wouldn't make that connection between the effort to provide the basis for integrating unmanned aircraft technologies into the airspace as a response to some perception that it's not safe.
Okay, this specific question has two parts. Since you really don't think that it's unsafe, why is it that whenever the 9157 was released, why has the FAA had no issue with models? question's kind of vague in my part.
It's the school teacher coming out. Watch.
Well, it certainly is.
So I'll try to take that. So because I was flying in 1981, and we read it, and if memory serves me well, AC, Advisory Circular 9157, I think it came out in June 9th of 1981, which was the day I went in the Army, and that was that was a long time ago. That I think had some guidance. It wasn't regulatory; it was advisory in nature, and it said that you have to not fly higher than 400 feet within. There's about 8 or 10 sentences in it, and I think the earlier discussion about technology improving and migrating into models and the capability of the systems, and we've seen demonstrations of flights at thousands of feet done safely. Accomplished safely. Turbines didn't exist in 1981. FPV is something that's new to the modeling community. How that's done, how it can be safely. Lots of variations and expansion of modeling aviation over time. So, do the folks that work in aviation at the FAA believe that modeling is unsafe? No. We don't believe aviation is unsafe either, but sometimes people do unsafe things with safe equipment. And for manned aircraft, there's just a whole host of regulations and guidance and means of doing things that you have to comply with if you're going to fly your Cessna or your commercial aircraft. And knowing that you have to comply with those and knowing that those represent a safe manner to do it is not a representation that we believe manned aviation is unsafe. So we believe manned aviation is safe. I think we've had the safest period of time in the last 10 years. I think I read in the paper recently for manned aviation, commercial, and model aviation is safe. There are some people that use their equipment unsafely. And I think the standard, when it's written and accepted by the administrator, will be a basis to say, hey, if you're following this, it's safe. And I think that's a good thing.